My name is Danica Carter. I'm 52 years old, and 20 minutes ago, I locked two people inside my kitchen. Let me tell you something about Thursday afternoons in Brooklyn. They're supposed to be boring, predictable. The kind of day where the biggest drama is whether the bodega on the corner is out of your favorite coffee creamer. I left work early. My boss had been writing me all week about some budget reports, and honestly, I was tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that settles into your shoulders after 23 years of marriage, 2 kids through college, and a mortgage that never quite gets smaller, no matter how many extra shifts you pick up at the accounting firm. I stopped at Sal's Market on the way home, bought vegetables for dinner, zucchini, cherry tomatoes, fresh basil, Marcus's favorite. I was going to make that pasta thing he always asks for, the one with the garlic and olive oil that makes the whole apartment smell like an Italian restaurant. I was thinking about being a good wife. Funny how that works. Our brownstone is a walk-up, 3rd floor. I was juggling the grocery bags in my purse when I noticed our front door wasn't completely closed, not wide open, just not latched. Like someone had pulled it shut but hadn't bothered to make sure it clicked. Marcus was supposed to be at his office until 6. Sales meeting. Or so he said. I pushed the door open quietly. Don't know why. Instinct, maybe. That little voice in the back of your head that knows something's wrong before your brain catches up. The apartment was too quiet. But not empty quiet. That loaded kind of silence that hums with secrets. And then I heard it. Laughter. Low and intimate. Coming from the kitchen. My kitchen, the one with the yellow curtains I'd hung myself last spring. The one where I'd packed thousands of school lunches and birthday cakes and Sunday dinners. I set the grocery bags down in the hallway. My hands were shaking, I remember that. I walked toward the kitchen on the balls of my feet, barely breathing. The door was cracked open about 3 inches. I looked through that crack, and my entire world tilted sideways. Marcus, my husband, the man I'd shared a bed with for over 2 decades. His shirt was half unbuttoned, hanging loose over his belt. His hair graying at the temples now, but still thick, was mussed up like someone had been running their fingers through it. And Talia Reeves, 28 years old, lives 2 floors down with her artist boyfriend who's never home. Always in those tight yoga pants and crop tops, always asking Marcus to help her move furniture or fix her sink. She was perched on my kitchen counter. My counter. The one I scrubbed down every single night. Her legs were wrapped around his waist. Her hands were in his hair. His hands were everywhere else. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My vision tunneled down to that one horrible scene, like looking through a keyhole into hell. And then I heard his voice, Marcus's voice. That familiar rumble I'd fallen in love with when I was 29 and stupid and believed in forever. She doesn't suspect a thing, he murmured against Talia's neck. Danica's so wrapped up in her spreadsheets and her routines, she trusts me completely. Talia laughed, a tinkling, girlish sound that made my stomach turn. Poor thing, she cooed. She probably thinks you're at some boring sales meeting right now. She always believes me. I could tell her anything. He pulled back, grinning. 23 years, and she still hasn't figured out how easy she is to fool. My hand went to my chest. I thought I might be having a heart attack. That's what it felt like someone had reached inside my ribcage and squeezed. Easy to fool. All those late nights at the office. All those weekend golf trips with clients. All those times he came home smelling like someone else's perfume, and I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid, jealous, crazy. I wasn't crazy. I was just married to a liar. Talia kissed him again, deep and hungry, and he responded like a man starving. On my counter, in my kitchen, in my home. Something shifted inside me, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't burst through that door like some hysterical wife in a bad movie. Instead, I reached out very slowly, very carefully, and I turned the deadbolt on the outside of the kitchen door. Click. It's an old building. The kitchen door locks from both sides, a quirk of the 1,920 seconds renovation that never got updated. I'd always thought it was strange, useless. Turns out it was perfect. I stood there for a moment, listening to them giggle and moan on the other side of that locked door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I picked up my purse, walked to the bedroom, and sat down on the edge of our bed. Our bed. Where we'd made love and made promises and made plans for a future that was apparently all a lie. I pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. 23 years. And he thought I was easy to fool. I smiled. It felt strange on my face. Cold. Let me tell you something about underestimated women, honey. About the wives who get called predictable and clueless and wrapped up in their routines. We're not stupid. We're just patient. And Marcus was about to learn the difference. I sat on that bed for a long time, staring at the closed bedroom door. And I don't know why, but all I could smell was garlic and basil from the grocery bags I'd left in the hallway. That smell took me back. Way back. 23 years ago, Marcus proposed to me in a kitchen. Not this one, a tiny studio apartment in Queens with a hot plate and a mini fridge that barely worked. He didn't have a ring yet, couldn't afford one. But he had this look in his eyes, this certainty, and he said, "Danica, I'm going to build us a life. I promise you." And I believed him. I worked 2 jobs that first year we were married, receptionist at a dental office during the day, weekend shifts at a diner in Astoria. Marcus was trying to get his sales career off the ground, but the commissions were thin and the bills were thick. I'd come home at midnight smelling like French fries and coffee, and he'd have fallen asleep on the couch with his sales reports scattered across his chest. I'd cover him with a blanket, kiss his forehead, whisper, "We're going to make it." And we did, sort of. When my mother got sick, stage 3 breast cancer, I took a leave from the dental office to care for her. Marcus said he understood. Said family came first. But the money got tighter. Hospital bills piled up like snow in February. We were drowning. I sold my wedding ring. Not the whole thing, just the diamond. Took it to a pawn shop on 5th Avenue and walked out with $1,800. Enough to cover 1 round of treatment. Enough to buy us another month. Marcus cried when I told him. Said he'd buy me a bigger diamond someday. A better one. He never did, but that was okay. I told myself love wasn't about diamonds. It was about showing up, about sacrifice, about believing in someone even when they couldn't believe in themselves. Marcus's company almost went under in 2015. Bad investments, worse partners, and a market that tanked at exactly the wrong time. He came home one night and just collapsed. Sat at our kitchen table, this table, the one we'd finally saved up for, and put his head in his hands. "I'm going to lose everything," he said. "The business, the clients, our reputation, everything." I worked overtime for 6 months. Every extra shift I could grab at the firm. I negotiated with creditors, restructured payment plans, called in favors from people I barely knew. I kept our household running while Marcus rebuilt his confidence piece by piece. And when he finally turned a profit again, when that first big commission check came through, he took me to dinner at a nice restaurant in Manhattan, held my hand across the table and said, "I couldn't have done this without you, Danny. You're my rock." I remember feeling so proud, so necessary, so loved. Talia moved into the building 3 years ago, young, beautiful, always struggling with something: rent, relationships, her car payment. She reminded me of myself at that age, trying so hard, falling so often. She knocked on our door one Tuesday evening, eyes red from crying. Her boyfriend had kicked her out. She had nowhere to go and no money for a deposit on a new place. Marcus looked at me. I looked at him. "We have the guest room," I said quietly. She stayed with us for 2 months. I made her breakfast every morning, helped her update her resume, drove her to job interviews. Marcus thought I was being too generous, but I told him, young people need opportunities. We were young once too. When she finally moved into her own apartment downstairs, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "You're like the mother I never had," she whispered. I felt good about that, proud. I thought I was doing something right in this world. Thought kindness mattered. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. The years you spend building something: a home, a marriage, a life brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. The way you convince yourself that love means enduring, supporting, believing, even when doubt creeps in at 3 in the morning. Thank you to everyone who helps keep these stories alive. Every word you share, every act of kindness helps protect those who still believe in family, who still believe that devotion means something. Because sitting on that bed, smelling garlic and basil through the walls, I realized something devastating. All those years, all those sacrifices. Marcus had been keeping score, and in his ledger, my devotion wasn't love. It was weakness. I heard them laughing again in the kitchen, muffled through the walls, carefree, like they were on vacation in someone else's life. My life. I stood up slowly, smoothed down my skirt, checked my reflection in the bedroom mirror. I looked the same tired eyes, same lines around my mouth from smiling too much at people who didn't deserve it. But something inside me had shifted, hardened. The woman who sold her wedding ring? The woman who worked herself to exhaustion? The woman who opened her home to a stranger? She was gone. And the woman staring back at me from that mirror? She was just getting started. I opened my phone and scrolled back through the last 3 months of texts from Marcus. Working late tonight. Client dinner ran long. Don't wait up. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under. That last one stung differently now. I remembered the night he'd sent it. I'd made his favorite pot roast, set the table, even lit candles. When he finally came home at 11, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, I'd asked if everything was okay. He'd looked at me like I was exhausting him just by existing. You wouldn't understand, he'd said, brushing past me to the bedroom. You've never had real ambition. I'd cleaned up the dinner alone, threw away the pot roast, blew out the candles, told myself he was just stressed. But now, sitting on our bed with that locked kitchen door between us, I understood perfectly. The pressure he'd been under? It was the effort of maintaining 2 lives. 2 women. 2 versions of himself. And I'd made it so easy for him. I heard Talia's voice drift through the walls, muffled but clear enough. When are you going to tell her? A pause. Then Marcus, soon. I just need to get everything in order first. My hands went cold. I stood up and walked to the dresser, pulled open the drawer where we kept important papers, bills, insurance documents, the deed to the apartment. My fingers were shaking as I flipped through the folder. And there it was. The property deed. Updated 6 months ago. Marcus Carter, 75% ownership. Danica Carter, 25% ownership. I stared at those numbers until they blurred. This apartment, the one I'd scrimped and saved for, the one I'd worked double shifts to afford, the one with my mother's china cabinet in the dining room and my grandmother's quilt on the bed, was no longer mine. Not really. He'd filed the paperwork while I was at work, forged my signature most likely. The reason listed: administrative convenience for estate planning purposes. Estate planning. He was planning a future, just not one that included me. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe right. I sat back down on the bed, still holding that deed, and something fell out of the folder onto my lap. En invoice. Kitchen renovation proposal. Requested by Marcus Carter. Total estimate. $28. Includes new countertops, custom cabinetry, professional-grade appliances, backsplash installation. Note: client requests modern, minimalist aesthetic, full gut renovation. $28,000. To destroy my kitchen. The kitchen where I'd made birthday cakes for our kids, where I'd canned vegetables every summer, where I'd taught myself to make Marcus's mother's recipes after she died because he missed her cooking. He was going to rip it all out. Replace it with something new and modern and minimalist. Something that didn't have my fingerprints all over it. Something for her. I thought about Talia perched on my counter an hour ago, her legs wrapped around my husband. I thought about Marcus whispering, "She's clueless." And I thought about all the little comments Talia had made over the past 3 years, the ones I'd brushed off as young person thoughtlessness. "You should dress younger, Mrs. Carter. Marcus is still so handsome you want to keep up, you know? Have you ever thought about Botox? Just a little, around the eyes. I don't know how you do it, working all day and then coming home to cook. I could never. That's so traditional." She'd been sizing me up the whole time, measuring my weaknesses, reporting back to Marcus on every crack in my armor. And Marcus, God, Marcus. The man I'd saved. The man I'd believed in when nobody else did. Last month, he'd come home from a conference and told me I was letting myself go, said I used to take pride in my appearance, said maybe if I tried harder, he'd feel more excited to come home at night. I'd signed up for a gym membership the next day. Started wearing makeup to work again. Bought new clothes I couldn't afford. And the whole time, he was sleeping with the girl downstairs. The girl I'd helped, fed, supported. The girl who'd hugged me and called me a mother figure. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. If you've ever given everything only to discover it was being used as currency in a transaction you didn't know you were part of, I see you. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. Because sitting there, holding that invoice, staring at that deed, listening to them laugh in my locked kitchen, something crystallized inside me. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about erasure. Marcus wasn't just replacing me with someone younger. He was systematically dismantling every piece of the life I'd built, taking my home, taking my identity, taking my history and feeding it into a wood chipper so he could start fresh with someone who didn't remind him of his failures. Someone who didn't know how many times I'd saved him. The kitchen went quiet suddenly. I heard Marcus try the door handle. Once. Twice. "Hey!" he called out, his voice uncertain now. "The door's stuck." Talia giggled nervously. "It's locked. From the outside." A longer pause. Then Marcus, his voice changing. "Danica?" I didn't answer. I just sat there on our bed, holding the deed to my stolen home, and smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd just realized she had nothing left to lose. And that made me very, very dangerous. I didn't move from that bed for a long time. The apartment had gone quiet. Even the sounds from the kitchen had stopped. No more laughter, no more whispered promises, just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of sirens on the street below. New York never sleeps, they say, but inside these walls, everything felt like it was dying. I set the deed down beside me, let the invoice flutter to the floor. My hands were still steady, steadier than they had any right to be, but I felt hollow. Like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped everything out, leaving just the shell of a woman who used to believe in things. The light from the kitchen spilled under the bedroom door. A thin golden line across hardwood floors. I'd refinished myself 3 summers ago. Marcus had been too busy. So I'd watched YouTube videos, rented a sander, spent 2 weekends on my hands and knees bringing these floors back to life. I'd been proud of that. Now I just stared at that strip of light and felt nothing. I heard Marcus call my name again. His voice had changed, less confident now, edged with something that might have been fear. The doorknob rattled. Talia said something I couldn't make out, her tone higher, panicked. I stood up slowly, walked past the bedroom door without opening it, moved through the living room like a ghost in my own home. The balcony door was unlocked. I stepped outside into the November chill. The cold bit through my blouse immediately, but I didn't go back for a jacket. The discomfort felt appropriate somehow. Honest. Below me, Brooklyn sprawled out in 1,000 lit windows. Other lives, other kitchens, other marriages that maybe weren't built on lies. Or maybe they were, maybe everyone was pretending, maybe I was the only one stupid enough to think devotion meant something. I gripped the railing, the metal was ice against my palms. 23 years. I tried to cry. Wanted to. But the tears wouldn't come. They dried up somewhere between the property deed and the renovation invoice. Between she's clueless and the realization that I'd been performing my own marriage alone for God knows how long. The kitchen light was still on. I could see its glow reflected in the balcony door glass. Could see my own reflection, too. 52 years old, ordinary, unremarkable. The kind of woman people's eyes slide past in the grocery store. Easy to fool, Marcus had said. Maybe he was right. I turned away from the railing and went back inside. The apartment felt too big suddenly. All these rooms we'd filled with furniture and memories and the accumulated weight of 2 decades. Now it just felt like a museum of my own stupidity. I walked to the hallway closet, reached up to the top shelf where I kept things I didn't use anymore but couldn't quite throw away. My fingers found the apron blue gingham, faded now, with "World's Best Cook" embroidered across the front in white thread. Marcus gave it to me for our 8th anniversary, said he loved coming home to my cooking, said I made our house feel like a home. I held it for a moment, feeling the worn fabric between my fingers. How many meals had I made wearing this? How many times had I tied it around my waist and thought I was doing something that mattered? I folded it carefully, smoothed out the wrinkles, walked to the kitchen, the one I couldn't enter because I'd locked 2 people inside, and opened the trash chute in the hallway instead. The apron disappeared down the shaft. I heard it hit bottom with a soft thud. Gone. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. The kind that makes you count the cracks in the ceiling at 3 in the morning because sleep stopped making sense. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. I went back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, the same spot I'd been sitting an hour ago when my world ended. Or maybe it had ended years ago, and I'd just been too busy working double shifts and making pot roast to notice. My phone buzzed. A text from my daughter Emma. She was in Boston now, working at a tech startup, living the life I'd sacrificed to give her. "Hey Mom, just checking in. Love you." Simple. Sweet. Completely unaware that her parents' marriage was currently locked in a kitchen having a breakdown. I typed back, "Love you too, sweetheart." My finger hovered over the send button. What would I tell her? How do you explain to your children that the foundation they built their lives on was actually quicksand? That every family dinner, every holiday photo, every Your Father and I story was a performance by a cast of two, except one of us didn't know we were acting? I deleted the message, wrote instead, "Love you too. Talk soon." Sent it. Set the phone down. The apartment was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. In, out, in, out. The mechanical persistence of a body that didn't know when to quit. I lay back on the bed, stared at the ceiling. There was a water stain in the corner shaped like a bird. I'd never noticed it before. How long had it been there? How many things had I missed while I was busy being devoted? The kitchen light was still on. Marcus had stopped calling my name. And I lay there in the silence, neither crying nor sleeping, just existing in the space between the woman I'd been and whoever I was becoming. The night stretched out long and cold. But somewhere, deep in that silence, something began to shift. Not hope, exactly. But maybe something sharper. Something with teeth. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went through every drawer, every file, every piece of paper in that apartment like a woman possessed. And maybe I was. Possessed by clarity. By the cold, sharp understanding that I'd been living in a carefully constructed lie. The joint retirement account we'd been building for 20 years, the one that was supposed to fund our golden years, trips to Italy, maybe a little cabin upstate had been drained 3 months ago. $73,000. Gone. The withdrawal slip had both our signatures. Except I'd never signed it. I held that paper up to the light, studying the loops of my forged name. He'd practiced. You could tell. It was almost perfect. Almost. I kept digging. In Marcus's briefcase, the one he thought I never touched, I found an email chain with Stephen Kowalski, his college roommate who'd become a divorce attorney. The subject line read, "Preliminary consultation. Steve. Need your advice on something delicate. Wife doesn't know yet. Want to make sure I'm protected. The apartment's appreciated significantly, probably worth $850K now. I need to understand how to structure things so I come out whole." She contributed, "Sure, but I've been the primary earner for years. Plus there's a complication, I'm seeing someone else. Younger. We want to start fresh, maybe invest in property together. Can we talk this week? M." Stephen's response was clinical. Professional. He outlined exactly how Marcus could maximize his take. Transfer assets before filing, establish separate accounts, document any unreasonable behavior on my part to build a case. The date on that email? 14 months ago. 14 months. I sat back in the desk chair, that email glowing on the laptop screen. 14 months he'd been planning this. While I was making dinner. While I was asking about his day. While I was believing in us. My hands were shaking now, but not from grief. From rage. I kept searching. There were more documents. A property valuation report Marcus had commissioned. A list of marital assets with projected division scenarios. And then, buried in a folder labeled 2024 taxes, I found something that made my blood run cold. A quitclaim deed, already prepared, just waiting for my signature. It would transfer my remaining 25% ownership of the apartment entirely to Marcus. The notary line was blank, the date was blank. But there was a sticky note attached in Talia's handwriting. "Get her to sign this, tell her it's for refinancing the mortgage." I heard Marcus's phone ring in the locked kitchen, his voice muffled through the door. "Steve, hey. Yeah, we need to talk. Something's happened. I think she knows." A pause. "No, I don't know how. She came home early. Look, I need to accelerate the timeline. Can you file the papers tomorrow? I'll say she's been unstable, emotionally volatile. We document it, get her out, then I can." He stopped talking suddenly. I heard Talia's voice, sharp with fear. Marcus, what if she's listening? Another pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was lower, colder. Once the apartment is legally mine, we're free. We sell it, take the cash, start somewhere new. She gets whatever the court makes me give her, but that's it. I've given her 23 years. That's enough. I stood up from the desk, walked to the kitchen door, put my palm flat against it. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. That crystalline clarity when everything you suspected suddenly makes horrible, perfect sense. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal. I didn't pound on the door, didn't scream. I just spoke, calm and clear. Marcus, I know everything. The kitchen went silent. I know about the retirement account. I know about Steve. I know about the quitclaim deed. I know you've been planning this for over a year. I heard him move closer to the door. Danica, I know, I said again, that you think I'm weak. Easy to fool. That you've already divided up our life like it's a garage sale. My voice didn't shake, it was steady as stone. But here's what you don't know, Marcus. That deed you forged, transferring the apartment to yourself, it's not legal. I never signed it, which means you committed fraud. And that retirement account you emptied? That's theft. And those emails planning to call me unstable while you steal everything we built? I smiled at the locked door. That's evidence. The silence on the other side was absolute. You wanted me clueless, I said softly. Congratulations, you got exactly what you deserved. The kitchen stayed locked for 3 more hours. I sat in the living room, listening to them argue through the door. Talia's voice getting shriller, Marcus trying to stay calm, then failing. At some point, they stopped talking altogether, just silence. The kind that means people are finally understanding the gravity of their situation. I didn't care anymore what they were feeling. I had work to do. There comes a point when silence stops meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I opened my laptop and started taking screenshots. Every email, every document, every forged signature. I created a folder labeled Evidence and watched it fill up like a dam holding back a flood. Then I called my bank. Hi, yes, this is Danica Carter. I need to freeze all transactions on my joint accounts effective immediately. Yes, both of them. No, my husband doesn't need to be notified. I'm listed as primary on one of them, and I'm reporting suspected fraud on the other. The representative put me on hold. Muzak played. I stared at the kitchen door and waited. Mrs. Carter? We've frozen the accounts. You'll need to come in tomorrow to file formal paperwork, but nothing can be moved until then. Perfect. And I'd like to open a new account. Personal. Just in my name. $73,000 was gone from our retirement fund, but we still had our emergency savings. $28,000. The exact amount Marcus wanted to spend gutting my kitchen for his mistress. Pudik, almost. I transferred every penny to my new account before Marcus could touch it. Each keystroke was a knife cut through chains. Next, I searched divorce attorney Brooklyn Women's Rights and found Margaret Chen's office in Park Slope, 5-star reviews, specialist in high-conflict divorce and asset protection. I booked a consultation for the next morning during my lunch break. Then I did something I'd never done before. I went through Marcus's phone records. Our cell plan was in my name, something he'd set up years ago for convenience. I logged into the account online and downloaded 6 months of call logs and text message records. The number that appeared most frequently wasn't Talia's. It was his business partner's, a man named Derek Chen, who I'd met exactly twice at company parties. I cross-referenced the timestamps with Marcus's late nights at the office and client dinners. Every single one matched. My hands went still on the keyboard. Derek Chen. Marcus Carter. I typed both names into Google, along with property records, New York. And there it was. A beach house in Montauk, purchased 8 months ago. Listed owners, Marcus Carter and Derek Chen. Not Marcus and Danica. Marcus and Derek. The down payment, $75,000. I sat back in my chair, staring at that property record. The beach house we'd always talked about buying. The dream we'd been saving for since our 30s, he'd bought it, with someone else, using money he'd stolen from me. For years I mistook generosity for love. Now I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Danica, please, we need to talk. Open the door. I didn't respond. Another buzz. Talia this time, Mrs. Carter, I'm so sorry. Please let us out. I'll leave. I'll never come back. I deleted it without reading it twice. The sun was starting to rise. Gray November light filtered through the curtains, catching dust motes in the air. I made myself a cup of coffee. Sat at the dining room table, the one we'd bought together at a estate sale in Queens 12 years ago, and watched the light change. My phone rang. Marcus calling. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. 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 I sipped my coffee and listened to the ringtone like it was background music. Each unanswered call felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. Around 7 a.m., I finally walked back to the kitchen door, put my ear against it. I could hear Marcus's voice, low and desperate, still on his phone. Steve, I'm serious. She's lost it. She locked us in here all night. This is evidence of mental instability, right? We can use this. I smiled. Let him think that. Let him build his case on the assumption that I was crazy, emotional, unhinged. He'd learn soon enough. They taught me that love meant giving. Today, I'm teaching myself that love can also mean stopping. I went to my bedroom and got dressed for work. Put on my best suit, the charcoal gray one I wore to important meetings. Did my makeup carefully. Pinned my hair back. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. This woman looked calm, focused, dangerous in a quiet way. I liked her. I gathered my purse, my laptop, the folder of printed evidence, checked my phone one last time. Margaret Chen's office had confirmed my 12:30 appointment. Before I left, I walked back to the kitchen door one final time. Marcus, I said clearly, I'm going to work now. I'll be back around 6. You have all day to think about what happens next. Danica, please? The choice is yours, I continued, speaking over him. You can call a locksmith and break out. But when you do, you'll find all our accounts are frozen. Your business partner Derek might want to hear about that beach house you bought together. And my lawyer will be very interested in those emails about having me declared unstable. Silence. Or, I said softly, you can sit there and wait for me to come home, and we can discuss terms like adults. I picked up my keys. Either way, Marcus, this ends on my timeline now, not yours. I walked out of that apartment with my head high. For the first time, I didn't need them to hear me. My silence had already spoken. And by the time I came home that evening, the real storm would begin. I came home at 6:30 that evening. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. For a moment, I thought maybe Marcus had called a locksmith after all. Maybe he'd run. But then I heard movement in the kitchen, the scrape of a chair, a whispered conversation that stopped the second my key turned in the lock. I'd left them there for nearly 12 hours. Good. I opened the door and walked in slowly, setting my purse down on the hall table. Through the kitchen doorway I could see them. Marcus sitting at the table, his shirt wrinkled, his face haggard. Talia standing by the sink, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. They both looked up when I appeared in the doorway. Danica, Marcus started. Don't. I held up one hand. I'm going to talk now. You're going to listen. I unlocked the kitchen door and pushed it open. Neither of them moved to leave. They just stood there, trapped by something more powerful than a deadbolt. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. I'm giving you both a choice, I said calmly. Tomorrow at noon, my lawyer, a bank representative, and a process server will be here. You can be here too. And we can handle this like adults. Or you can run, and I'll handle it through the courts. Marcus' face went pale. Danica, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. My voice was steel. I understand that 14 months ago, you started planning to divorce me and take everything we built. I understand that you stole $73,000 from our retirement account to buy a beach house in Montauk with your business partner Derek. I understand that you've been forging my signature on legal documents and planning to have me declared mentally unstable so you could take this apartment. Talia made a small sound. A whimper. I understand, I continued, that you've been sleeping with our neighbor, in my kitchen, on my counters, while telling her how clueless and easy to fool I am. Marcus stood up. I can explain. You can listen. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Tomorrow at noon. Be here or don't. But either way, this ends on my terms now. I turned and walked out, leaving the kitchen door open behind me. They could leave any time they wanted now. But they'd never be able to run far enough. The next day, I dressed like I was going to war. Black suit. Pearls my mother had given me. Hair pulled back so tight it hurt. I wanted to look like exactly what I was. A woman who would not be moved. At 11:45, Margaret Chen arrived with her briefcase and a young associate. At 11:50, the bank representative, a thin man named Howard, with nervous hands knocked on the door. At 11:58, the process server showed up, looking bored and professional. At noon exactly, Marcus and Talia walked in. They dressed up too, Marcus in his best suit, the one he wore to close big deals, Talia in a demure dress that made her look younger than 28. They thought presentation would save them. How naive. Please, I gestured to the couch. Sit down. Margaret Chen didn't smile. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents that landed on the coffee table with a heavy thud. Mr. Carter, she began, I'm Margaret Chen, representing Mrs. Carter in dissolution of marriage proceedings. We've prepared a comprehensive filing that includes evidence of adultery, financial fraud, and attempted asset manipulation. She slid the first document across the table. Marcus picked it up with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the pages. I watched the color drain from his face. You can't, he started. I can. I leaned forward. Marcus, I have everything. The emails to Stephen Kowalski, the forged signatures on the property deed, the bank records showing you emptied our retirement account, the property records showing you bought a house in Montauk with Derek Chen using my money. I picked up the remote and turned on the TV. The screen flickered to life. And there they were, Marcus and Talia, frozen in the kitchen, the camera angle perfect. I'd set up my laptop on the hall table before I'd locked them in, positioned just right to capture everything through the cracked door. The timestamp glowed in the corner, yesterday 3:47 p.m. I pressed play. Their voices filled the room. She's clueless. She trusts me blindly. Poor thing. She probably thinks you're at some boring sales meeting right now. She always believes me. I could tell her anything. Talia stood up, her face white as paper. I need to leave. Sit down, Miss Reeves, Margaret said sharply. You're mentioned in these documents as well, including a potential lawsuit for alienation of affection. Talia sat. The bank representative cleared his throat. Mr. Carter, I'm here to inform you that all accounts bearing your name have been frozen pending investigation of suspected fraud. That includes the joint account with Mrs. Carter and your personal business accounts. Marcus's hands were shaking now. Danica, please. We can work this out. We don't need lawyers. We can. Work it out? I stood up, walked to where he sat, looked down at him like he was a stranger. Because he was. Marcus, you spent 14 months plotting to steal my home, my money, and my dignity. You brought your mistress into my kitchen, the kitchen where I cooked for you for 23 years and laughed about how stupid I was. My voice didn't waver. The kitchen you defiled is the kitchen I built, and now everything you tried to steal is gone. The process server stepped forward and handed Marcus a thick envelope. You've been served. Marcus looked up at me. For the first time since I'd known him, I saw real fear in his eyes. Danica. We're done, I said quietly. Get out of my apartment. Talia was already halfway to the door. Marcus stood slowly, the envelope clutched in his hand, and followed her. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and I stood there in the living room, in my apartment, surrounded by my team and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Margaret Chen put a hand on my shoulder. You did good, Danica. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak yet. Through the window I could see Marcus and Talia on the sidewalk below, arguing, her pointing, him gesturing helplessly. I closed the curtains. I didn't need to watch them fall apart. I had my own life to rebuild. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Margaret Chen was efficient, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when she needed to be. Within 2 weeks, a temporary order gave me full possession of the apartment. Marcus had 48 hours to collect his belongings and leave. I wasn't there when he came to pack. I couldn't be. Some wounds are still too fresh to watch bleed. My neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, the one who actually lived across the hall, not 2 floors down in yoga pants, texted me while it was happening. He's taking boxes out. Looks like he's been crying. That girl isn't with him. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. I spent those 2 days at Emma's apartment in Boston. My daughter had flown home the moment I told her everything. She'd held me while I cried the first real tears I'd let myself shed since that Thursday afternoon. She made me tea, ordered Thai food, and told me she'd always thought Marcus was selfish but had been too afraid to say it. "You deserved better, Mom," she said quietly. "You always did." When I came back to Brooklyn, the apartment felt different, lighter somehow. Marcus had taken his clothes, his golf clubs, his collection of sales awards. He'd left the furniture probably because he knew I could prove I'd paid for most of it. The kitchen was exactly as I'd left it. My counters, my stove, my yellow curtains. Mine. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just breathing. The neighborhood learned the truth quickly. New York is a small town pretending to be a big city, especially in brownstone Brooklyn, where everyone knows everyone's business. Mrs. Rodriguez told Mrs. Kim, who told the super, who told the guys at the bodega, who told everyone else. Within a week, the whole block knew that Marcus Carter had been caught cheating, had tried to steal his wife's home, and had been legally evicted from his own marriage. I didn't have to say a word. The truth did all the talking for me. I heard through Emma, who heard through a former college friend who worked at Marcus's company, that he'd been placed on administrative leave pending an internal ethics review. Turns out when you forge your spouse's signature on financial documents, your employer tends to question your integrity in general. Derek Chen, his business partner, had quietly dissolved their joint property ownership and was reportedly exploring other investment opportunities. Translation: he wanted nothing to do with the scandal. The beach house in Montauk went on the market 3 weeks after the divorce was filed. They were asking $850,000. It sold for $720,000. After the mortgage and fees, Marcus's share barely covered his legal bills. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. Talia moved out of the building in the middle of the night. No goodbye, no forwarding address. Mrs. Rodriguez said she saw her loading boxes into a U-Haul at 2 a.m., crying the whole time. I heard through the same grapevine that had spread Marcus's downfall that her ex-boyfriend had filed a civil suit against her for fraud. Something about money she'd borrowed and never returned, promises she'd made about investing in his art career. Turned out Talia had a pattern of using people and discarding them when they stopped being useful. Karma, I thought, has a long memory. Marcus tried to call me once, about a month after he'd moved out. I let it go to voicemail. "Danica, I want you to know I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. I was selfish. I was stupid. I threw away the best thing in my life for nothing." His voice cracked. "I see that now. I see what I lost, and I know it's too late, but I'm sorry." I deleted the message without listening to it twice. Some apologies come too late to matter. I heard through Emma, who still had mutual friends with Marcus's kids from his first marriage, that he was living in a studio apartment in Queens now, working at a different sales firm for half the commission. Dating someone new already, though it apparently wasn't serious. They used to whisper that I'd lost my mind. Now they avoid their own reflections. I didn't feel sorry for him, but I didn't feel vindictive either. Just empty of him, like a house after you've cleared out furniture that never quite fit right in the first place. One afternoon I was cleaning out the hallway closet and found an old photo that had slipped behind the shelf. Our wedding day. Marcus and me, young and smiling, standing outside City Hall. I was wearing a cream dress from Macy's. He was in his only suit. We looked so certain, so naive. I held that photo for a long moment. Then I walked to the kitchen, opened the trash chute, and let it fall. I watched it disappear down the shaft. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. The apartment was quiet after that, the good kind of quiet. The kind that feels like possibility instead of loneliness. I made myself dinner that night. Just for me. Pasta with garlic and olive oil, the dish I used to make for Marcus. But this time, I made it exactly how I liked it, with extra red pepper flakes and fresh basil from the plant on my windowsill. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, sitting at my table in my kitchen in my apartment. And for the first time in 23 years, I didn't cook for anyone but myself. It tasted like freedom. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. I stood in my kitchen 3 months after the divorce was finalized, watching steam rise from a cup of chamomile tea. The same kitchen where everything had ended, or maybe where everything had begun. The counters were clean, the yellow curtains had been washed and rehung. I'd bought a new set of dish towels, soft blue ones that made me smile for no particular reason. The room looked the same as it had before that Thursday afternoon, but it felt completely different. It felt like mine. I ran my hand along the counter where Talia had been perched, and I felt nothing. No anger, no pain. Just smooth granite under my palm and the knowledge that some stains don't show but still need to be scrubbed away. Margaret Chen had called that morning with the final settlement numbers. The apartment was mine, free and clear. I'd gotten 60% of our joint assets. The judge had not looked kindly on Marcus's attempted fraud. My retirement account had been restored with interest and penalties paid by Marcus himself. On paper, I'd won everything. But sitting there with my tea, I realized that wasn't the victory that mattered. Justice isn't about watching them fall, it's about standing again without hate. There were nights, in those first weeks alone, when I'd wanted Marcus to suffer, really suffer. I'd wanted him to feel every ounce of pain he'd caused me, multiplied by 23 years. I'd wanted Talia to understand what it felt like to be discarded like trash. But somewhere between the lawyer meetings and the court dates and the quiet evenings learning how to be alone, that desire had faded. Not because they didn't deserve consequences, they did, and they got them, but because I realized that my freedom couldn't be built on their suffering. It had to be built on something stronger than revenge. It had to be built on me. I opened the kitchen window, letting in the cool November air. The city sounds drifted up: car horns, distant sirens, someone's music playing too loud. New York being New York. Life continuing, indifferent to my small domestic drama. And that was oddly comforting. I thought about all those years I'd spent trying to be enough, working 2 jobs to pay Marcus's debts, selling my wedding ring, taking care of his mother when she was dying, opening my home to strangers who needed help. I'd thought that's what love looked like. Sacrifice. Endurance. Giving until there was nothing left. I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. The truth is, Marcus had been showing me who he was for years. The late nights that smelled like perfume. The way he'd started criticizing my appearance, my career, my lack of ambition. The coldness that had crept into our marriage like frost on a window. I'd seen it all. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. Because believing it would have meant admitting I'd wasted 2 decades on someone who saw my devotion as weakness, my kindness as stupidity, my love as something to be exploited and discarded. And maybe I had wasted those years. Or maybe they'd taught me something I needed to learn. That kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a photo Emma had sent me last week. The 2 of us at lunch in Boston, both of us laughing at something I couldn't even remember now. I looked happy in that photo. Really happy. The kind of happy that comes from the inside, not from trying to make someone else comfortable. My daughter had told me she was proud of me, said I'd shown her what strength looked like, said she'd spent years watching me shrink myself to fit Marcus's needs, and seeing me stand up for myself had changed something in her too. "You taught me that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat, Mom," she'd said, "and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away." I hadn't known my suffering had been teaching her anything. But maybe that's how these things work. Maybe pain isn't wasted if someone learns from it. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive. Stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals. The light was changing outside, that golden hour before sunset when Brooklyn looks almost beautiful, almost forgiving. I watched it paint the buildings across the street in shades of amber and rose. I thought about Marcus in his studio apartment in Queens, about Talia wherever she'd run to, about all the ways their own choices had led them to lonely places. And I felt peaceful about it. Not glad, not vindictive. Just at peace with the fact that everyone carries the weight of their own decisions eventually. I didn't need to carry theirs anymore. I finished my tea and rinsed the cup, set it in the dish rack to dry, turned off the kitchen light and walked to the living room where I'd set up my laptop. I had plans to start taking online classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was busy being someone's wife. Maybe literature, maybe art history, maybe something completely random just because I could. For the first time in decades, my life was my own to fill however I wanted. That evening, as the sun set over Brooklyn and the city settled into its nighttime rhythm, I stood on my balcony with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The air was cold, but I didn't mind. It felt clean. Honest. I thought about everything I'd been through. The betrayal. The fight. The victory. And I realized something that made me smile, a small private smile just for myself. Justice gave me back my name, but peace gave me back myself. And that, finally, was enough.